Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final Grand Prix recap. Today we will crown a winner of the event in Berlin, either Hikaru Nakamura or Levon Aronian. I don't know why I said his first name like that and then said his, I don't know, that was strange. I'm also trying to actually keep my voice down a little bit because if you remember, I have a puppy now and he's right there. I set up a second camera, it's on my desk, he's sleeping. So we're gonna try to record a recap and maybe put up a dog cam. So this is going to be quite a unique recap, but you know, two working dog parents, I suppose. So we're gonna figure this thing out, and then at the end, I'm also going to let you all know about the standings and how they work, because Grand Prix standings are very weird. Like, people think that the winner here is going to qualify to the candidates. There's actually 3 Grand Prix. So these guys are competing for either 13 points or 10 points in the overall standings. Everybody gets a certain amount of points. That's a live camera, so we're gonna see if he wakes up in the middle of this. Let's jump into the action. Hopefully the camera's not too distracting. First game of Rapid Chess, Hikaru's got the white pieces and he opens up with e4 and he goes into Levon's Rue Lopez. Now, again, this is a 25-minute game, so they have two 25-minute games. If necessary, they're going to play some blitz. I'm not putting timestamps on the video player, if you noticed, because I don't want to spoil anything. So Hikaru opens up with this, and if you were following yesterday's game, you know they actually reached this very position. So Levon plays castles because Levon is looking to play d5. He's looking to play the marshal. Hikaru is not interested at all in playing the marshal, and frankly for a good reason, because the ensuing positions are basically known to be completely okay for black. And Levon plays bishop b7, d3. Now, yesterday, the game went d6, a3, queen d7, knight d8, knight e6. You remember that, obviously. Right? Benji, they remember that? Okay, he's asleep. But in this game, Levon plays the second most popular move in the position. Oh, he woke up. Second most popular move in the position, which is not d6. He plays the move d5. So he's actually still trying to play the marshal, which is fascinating. So what basically had to happen is that Aronian went back to his hotel room and was like, you know what? If he plays this against me in the rapid, I'm going to play d5 anyway. This bastard's not going to get away with it. And Hikaru must have shown up like he might play d5 against me anyway, because the thing is, if you're going to go into this line, you have to be ready for d6 and d5. So he sharpened his tools. Now, takes. This position has been reached many times before, including by Levon with white against Ding Liren, who is one of the best practitioners of the Rue Lopez from the black side. When he's playing, they played this position about 5 times already. So Levon's got plenty of experience with white and with black. How do you beat a guy who knows the position with white and with black? Like, what are you supposed to do? No, I mean, like, seriously, like, what are you supposed to do, right? Like, I mean, you just gotta play chess. So, again, the point is that this is possible, but after knight e5, rook e5, c6 is not actually a good move now, just so you understand. It's only good when the bishop is here. Why would you block in your bishop? The difference here is that black will probably just play, like, knight f6 at some point. Even now, knight f6, for example, if you just play naturally, I play bishop d6, I'm gonna get my queen out at some point. This is not, let me just tell you right now, these bishops, this is not pleasant stuff, all right? That's not what you want in a game of chess. So Hikaru obviously doesn't take on e5. He plays the move a4, which Levon himself has played before. I'm trying to put you in the mindset of these players. Like, a4, Hikaru plays it, but Levon's also played this. Knight d4. Now, a4 is a move. There's also other possibilities here. Knight d4. Black tries to kind of simplify the position, opening up the light-scored bishop. And here it's actually beneficial for white not to trade knights, but give away the bishop on b3. Why? Because when the dust settles, you trade bishop for knight. This pawn is still weak. And for that reason, in this position, Ding Liren has played f6 multiple times. Ding Liren played this against Aronian all those times that they got to this position. And here, Aronian played different moves. And, you know, he played like knight h4, he played knight a5, queen c8 is usually how this goes. Knight a5, queen c8, and then you either play knight h4, queen e2, c3. Levon literally played all of this. But in this game, Levon doesn't play f6 with black. Levon plays knight b4. So it's not that he's making an improvement, he's just setting the game in a completely different direction. I'm trying to put you in the headspace of both these guys, right? Knight b4 just gives up the pawn. Black is like, go ahead. Been trying to play this marshal for the entire damn game, take my pawn. Hikaru's like, all right, look, a pawn's a pawn, right? I have to take the pawn at some point. Queen d5 played. Now, that's a very good move because threatening mate in one is generally a good thing. Hikaru shockingly sees the threat and plays f3. Crazy. And you can also play knight f3 here. So we're following a game, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Wesley So. I believe MVL played knight f3 in this game, but I can't remember exactly. There are a few games. Black plays bishop d6. oh, I'm sorry, f3, bishop d6. And we see everything he's trying to do, right? So now what Hikaru is trying to do is hold it together. He's trying to hold the whole position he's together. He's trying to protect f3, he's trying to protect d4, trying to protect d5, etc., etc., etc. Rook e8. Levon here can also play c5, and that leads to a very sharp position after knight d7. Bishop g3, attacking the rook and attacking the knight. Knight bc5, bishop e1, knight f8. I mean, it's just insane. Engine is on one here. All right, engine's rolling. Props if you know what I'm talking about. Rook e8, takes, bishop d2. So Hikaru is trying to target the knight. He's also got the open A file, and White's position is looking quite promising. Computer here actually wants Black to play bishop c8, which just looks, I mean, utterly ridiculous. But the point is that it's actually kind of hard for White to make a move. Like, try to find a move. For example, let's say you play rook e2, bishop f5, and now Black is creating some concrete problems, right? The bishop is getting reactivated, and White is going to have to give up 2 bishops for 2 knights. Which is, 1 bishop is okay, but 2 is, this is what we call partial compensation in these positions. We don't call it that. I'm just what the chess term is. So, yeah, partial compensation, and Black is doing very well. But Levon plays knight c6, and this is where the problems begin, because knight b4 to c6 is just not, it's not in the style, it's not in the flavor of the position. You don't want to play knight c6, because what this allows is Hikaru gets to take the initiative immediately. And let me tell you something, when Hikaru has an opportunity to take the initiative, he doesn't miss. He just doesn't miss. Now you might be wondering, does knight d7 trap the rook? No, because rook takes check, and then I get out. Bishop f4, holding it together. King h8. You know what's funny? The best stockfish move is knight b4. Just go back and be like, that never happened. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know. So king h8, and now it's time for White to start making progress. How do you make progress? By taking a step back. That's actually very impressive. Bishop h2 is an extremely impressive move. It now protects the bishop, so the knight is able to move. And again, when you are in a position where you are up a pawn, but your opponent has laser beam pieces, if you tame those pieces, at the end of the day, what happens? You're up a pawn. So you're just gonna win, right? So that's what Hikaru is trying to get at. Now we have takes, queens, and bishop is hit. So what's gonna happen? Levon takes, Hikaru takes, queens still see each other, rook takes. We have a little standoff here. Takes, queen d4. And Hikaru gives back the pawn, but with basically a long-term promise of torturing his opponent. Now he plays queen c5, it's forcing a queen trade. So this is like a very advanced concept. Like, beginners here do not play queen d4. Actually, some of you might, because obviously some players are like, if I trade my queen, I can't lose it. I'm a genius. But it's far more human to think of just very aggressive, infiltrating moves. Queen d4 is the only move to try to get an advantage. Just like bishop f4 was the only move to get an advantage, just like bishop h2 was the only move to get an advantage, Hikaru is playing super, super accurately. And it's going to come down to a knight versus bishop game with the different activity of the rooks. We have queen g5. Queen c5, takes. Bishop goes to d5. Now, White is slightly better. Why? More active rook with very tangible threats, right? This rook on f8 is trash. We also have total symmetry of pawns. We have bc and we have fgh, okay? So we have 5 pawns each that are completely the same, but White's knight is very, very nicely placed. So even though you can play c6, what Hikaru is going to do now is come up with long-term strategy to just create problems. And if Black just plays passively with moves, he can't even, rook d8 just loses c6 actually, so that doesn't even work. But what White is also going to do is, after taking, White still has to win this next phase of the game. So you have 5 on 4. Okay, congrats, you have 5 on 4. But let's not forget that sometimes 1 on 0, if you trade, and 3 on 3 could be a draw. Because rook end games are like that. Sometimes you get your rook locked behind your own pawn, right? And then that's it. That's it. You just, there's no more progress to be made. So knight c6, rook d8, and now g4. Now g4 looks like a mistake because you get your rook glued on the second rank. Your king glued like this. Now this is not always what we want, because now your king can't get active, right? So how is Hikaru gonna play now? Well, he's just gonna play h4. And the thing is, what is Black gonna do? Like, let's say Black plays king f8, you're gonna move your pawn up and just try to win this pawn and make kingside progress. So h4, h5, takes, and that's exactly what he does. Now, you can play rook takes h4, and Hikaru does give him back the h4 pawn, it looks like. But now king g2, and now the king is getting off the back rank, so he's given up the pawn. It's a bit of an inaccuracy. It probably would have been better a little bit back here, to maintain flexibility, so just to play like b4 and then have the option to walk without committing pawns. But again, it's a rapid game. We're going to have maybe slight inaccuracies. And while he does give this up, it allows Levon to get back into the game. But like I said, there's still long-term nuisances here. And the nuisances exist in the sense that black should just play rook d5, rook f5, like bounce back and forth and try to not do anything. Levon is still trying to liquidate. So he gives up h for f, but that 2-on-1 is still there. It's still there, and you can play this forever. Now, how do you try to play this? Try to kick the rook. All right, now we have the rook in the perfect square guarding everything. We're going to take b5 at the right moment. First, we're going to walk the king over, and right here is the critical moment of the game. Levon can keep an eye on the pawn, or he can go back and let the pawn get captured and push the f-pawn. So it's going to be 2-on-1. F-pawn is going to be the difference. He didn't go sideways because I imagine that he thought that rook c6, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he thought king d4 to protect. Check, here, check. And again, it's rapid, so you do all this quickly. He thought of this and said, no, this is lost. This is just losing because I lose my pawn on b5. It's not lost. It's actually a draw after f5. So if white takes, this pawn is too active and the king is too far. So even though you get rook b8, it seems like this is a draw. But it's only a draw if you play king e7. And don't let the rook touch the f-file. If rook b5, you go back. And now you have this dance. And if I sidestep this way, I get closer. It's so nuanced because it's all about the activity of the pieces, right? And the one tempo at a time. So Levon goes backwards. He doesn't see that. Rook b5, rook d1, check. And now Hikaru's in cruise control. He's winning, right? So it's 2 pawns versus 1. Benji's twitching in his sleep. It's adorable. And king e6. Rook d3, but Hikaru makes a mistake and allows the pawn to get active anyway. Notice how Hikaru's pawns haven't made any progress yet, right? But Levon's pawn has. Uh-oh, you can't get the king there because rook check. So we have rook b8, king f5. Okay, finally his pawns have made progress. But f3, king e3, and it's a draw again. Hikaru has blundered. It's a draw. It's a draw actually for an insane reason. King e5, according to the engine, is a draw. And if king here, I play rook b3. That's just, I mean, it's so savage. Rook b3. And the point is that now you're too far. So if you push, I take with check. I get back here, and the king is back in time. The thing is, if the king gets isolated in no man's land in a rook endgame, there's checks. So the rook is going to get away from that pawn. I just told you about this. Rook in front of the pawn, right? Has nowhere to go unless it's check. Unless it's check. Unless it's check, but too close to the pawn. Levon has the slimmest of margins to save this game. King e3, he has to go rook b3, or he has to go king e5. He plays the drawing move. He plays one of the other drawing moves, but the problem is now the king is a little bit closer, and Levon has a decision. Does he go for these pawns, or does he go support his friend, right? Does he go support his homie on f3, doesn't let him die, and he goes the wrong way. He goes the wrong way. But he has one last chance. King c2. Levon has to either move his rook out of the way and take his eye off the b-pawn, or he has to play f2 and try to queen. Rook a3 draws, and f2 loses, and he plays f2. Rook a3 is a draw, even though it's so difficult. It's a draw because the following sequence of moves. King g3, helping the pawn. b6, rook a2 check, so rook stays active. Rook a1. And it looks like you've solved everything, but I come back. I have rook a6, and I'm threatening the pawn from the side, and white has to choose who is going to be supported by the rook. That's the problem. That's why this is a draw. Almost unfindable. I mean, just borderline unfindable. In fact, you have to get to this position. You have to allow the queen, and he plays f2 though. Levon plays f2, rook f8, rook takes b5, rook f2, and actually here I think he lost on time, but this is a losing king and pawn endgame. So I talked about this. Sometimes it's a draw when it's a pawn difference of 1, but in this case it's a loss because the defending side is cut off. That's called a cutoff. The king just can't get close. Hashtag Shale Sonnen. If the king is here, it's a draw. It's actually a relatively straightforward draw. But the further the king, the harder to draw, and you have to cut the king off. And I think Levon lost on time, but this is just winning. You just slowly move up, and then you have to get out with your king at some point. And so Hikaru is up 1-0. So now Levon comes back, and Levon has to win this game. So this is a must-win game. If Levon wins this game, they play faster time control, and Benji still sleeps. So what is Levon going to do to beat Hikaru? By the way, e4, e5 masterclass. No one's playing anything different. Bishop c4. So he played that yesterday to try to win. He's playing it again today. Bishop c5. Now, here there are two main lines, c3, d4, and c3, knight f6, d3. Gioco pianissimo. Levon castles, which on its own is not a bad move at all. It's obviously not a bad move, and, you know, now he will play c3 or d3, right? No, he plays rook e1. Now, this combination of castles and rook e1 is almost never played at top level. The highest ever rated player to play this in an over-the-board game is Levon. Right now. This is officially the highest rated game ever to get to this position, because rook e1 is not a very flexible move, and also you're just not committing anything to the middle of the board. This is suboptimal. In fact, I already wonder if black can play knight g4. Like, when I was looking at this, I'm like, can't black just play knight g4? I mean, rook e2, and I guess it's, I don't know, I guess it's like not very good for black, but here's a Stockfish line, f5, and apparently black is better. I'm not even joking. Stockfish literally thinks black is better because of this. You just get the whole center. You're like almost winning here with d5. Knight takes f2 also. Yeah, I mean, it's just nuts. And if white tries to play too passively, takes, knight d4, and all of a sudden, like, what are these pieces doing? This is not the way your pieces are supposed to be coordinated. So Stockfish was like trying to hate on this. But the thing is, if a guy comes prepped, you're not going to play into the trappy, aggressive stuff. You're going to play solid. So d6. The problem is the way Hikaru plays this, it's slightly it's slightly inaccurate. It gives black everything he wants. Like, for example, here I think computer wanted it was considering bishop g4. To try to prevent black from expansion, white from expansion. I'm sorry. So Hikaru, he gets out of the way. D4 comes, yeah, I mean, well, white is getting everything. He's preventing bishop g4. He has the whole center, and his position is definitely slightly worse. As early as bishop e3, h6, white already is like +1 according to the machine. Computer just thinks that white has a very, very nice center advantage, and black hasn't gotten much to show for it. So, yeah, now time for Hikaru to defend the position, or Levon's going to win, and we're gonna have fast time control. So bishop b3, we already know this maneuver to get the bishop out of the way of the knight and the pawn, and also d5 in the long run. Pawn tension in the center is very prevalent. Knight d2, bishop d7. And now Levon plays an incredible move, queen b1, and that's the top Stockfish move. The fact that that's a top Stockfish move just shows you how obscenely complicated these positions are. You have two ideas, supporting the center and also queenside expansion in the future. So queen e7, a3, and queen comes to help. Now Hikaru moves his queen to f8 because it doesn't really have any purpose anywhere else. If it's going to hang out back here, it's not participating. If it hangs out on e7, it could be a target. So he puts his queen away and plays b5. Now Levon has to either break in this on the side with a4 or c4 or continue to improve. And actually, Hikaru is the one that begins taking over the initiative. Like, for example, rook a c1, a bit of a lazy move, allows this. And this is typical, like, Rui stuff, Rui Lopez, like knight a5, c5. Obviously, we didn't have that here, but we have the expansion anyway. It would have been better for Levon to probably go after the b5 pawn right away with something like a4. Like, he has to go for a4 now. And there's still many, many complications. Obviously, everything is pressuring, very tough position. But he plays rook c1 sort of lackadaisically, and Hikaru, just like last game, you give him one moment, he will strike so fast. You strike so fast. And like this guy, by the way. But he's like 650, and these guys are like 2800. So c5, and all of a sudden it's like, what does white do? Because, for example, let's say white plays d5, c4, now this bishop is in jail. So that's not very good. So b3 to prevent c4, but now knight just goes back. What do you do? So he plays d5, knight e7, c4, and b4. Look at this. Avalanche of pawns, right? So now Levon's like, I gotta do something. I mean, we've traded no pieces. We played 20 moves. I gotta do something. c4, b4. Takes. Okay. So CB got traded for black. AC got traded for white and dark squared bishops. Who's better? Great question. It's 0-0-0. It's completely complicated position as Doggy is flipping over on his butt, the back. It's just adorable. It's amazing stuff. Yeah, he hasn't been able to jump up on the couch just yet, but he jumps off of it, so he just has to do the reverse. Now, what does black want? Black wants to trade these pawns and completely make it symmetrical. So, like in an absolutely perfect world, you just get this. It's just an ASAP draw. The problem is that if you play a5, I'm obviously going to go here, give you 2 middle fingers. Okay, not 1. You know I mean it when it's 2, right in your face. It's going to be very bad to see on camera. So he can't play a5 just yet. So instead he plays rook b8 and he attacks this pawn. Levon plays queen a3, and Hikaru begins the transfer of pieces to the queen side, because again, what does Black want? Black wants a position that looks like this. So Levon now has to do something about creating winning chances, and sometimes to create winning chances, you have to transform the position by a series of trades to remove your opponent's most nagging pieces and leave the remainder of the pieces on the board to your advantage. I said a lot of words there. Did you follow? No? Outstanding. What else can I expect from the audience? Doesn't really matter. It's what Hikaru did last game when he traded some pawns, bishop, and then queen, and then got that better endgame. So queen a5. Takes. He takes the queen first, king f1, still has the queen side imbalance, and now begins the piece transfer over there. Obviously, at this point, Black can really consider the move a5. But then there's rook a1. Oh, not that. Rook a1, and then you're pinned. Little bit annoying. So Hikaru begins transferring the pieces that way too, and doesn't want to continue the transfer because he's too slow. Like knight e7's just too slow. White solidifies, rook a1. He gets his knight here, one of these knights, maybe to c4, and he's just better. So Hikaru just finds just the perfect move. He plays f5. He loses a pawn with tempo because knight e7 and now white's pawns are split and they're both liabilities. So he plays the best defensive move at the right moment. Levon solidifies, takes, now knight f4. So now this pawn is now going to be a liability for this knight on f6. So if white ever begins the full transfer of the knights this way, this pawn will stay a liability. Takes, king e2, and Levon continues to try to apply some pressure by bringing the king and defending the e4 pawn, right? So that's the idea. Rook b8, rook b1, knight f6. At this point, I think the best move and the only winning chance was it king d3? No, it wasn't king d3 because then b4 is hanging, right? There was some moment here, I can't remember where it was, where there was like one very brief moment. Maybe it was this, I don't know. Where Stockfish was trying to say that the ensuing endgame was going to be better for white. Like it wanted this or something. Like it wanted Levon to go for this. And try to go for the d6 pawn while trying to defend e4. But Levon played rook b1, and Hikaru got his counterplay. So everything that he has envisioned, all the critical moments of this game, he's just defending very well. Levon has to make one final push into the black position. And I think this might have been the moment. I think here he had to take a step backwards and play to e2. And the reason is, now that Black's knight is paralyzed to defending the d6 pawn, he can't go back to f6 because you lose this, right? And you defend everything. And what happens now is that the king gets to d3, and this is always protected. This was it. Move 39, Levon had to, like, if you look at the trajectory of his moves, king f3, knight c4, is going forward, right? Right? So he obviously will play h4 after knight e8 because you're going forward. But sometimes in chess, you have to pump the brakes, and you have to not go forward. You have to improve your position ever so slightly before you go forward. I struggle with this all the time. A slight improving move, just asking, what is my opponent going to do? They can't really do much. Obviously, it's not just that simple, but he plays h4, and now Hikaru sees that the knight is coming to c6, and I mentioned this a while ago. When the knight goes too far, suddenly the knight comes back, and g4 is counterplay. It's just pure counterplay is coming. So if you play knight c6, which looks like the game plan, you have no way to protect this pawn. For example, you can play rook e1, but then oops. It looked like that pawn was untouchable, but oops, now black is winning. And we have takes, knight c6, and actually almost all of that happens. Knight d4, Hikaru plays g4 check, takes, and Levon just says, I'm going forward with the king. If I'm gonna lose this match, I'm gonna go out on my sword. I am not repeating moves and knocking myself out of the Grand Prix. I'm gonna play this for a win. Rook d4, king f6, Hikaru takes another pawn. It's now two rooks, but 3-2. Black is up pawns. So it's probably looking like Hikaru might just get a perpetual check. Levon's like, no, thank you. I told you I am going out the way I want, and the way I want is going to lead to my king getting forced to the very, very back rank. And Hikaru sets up the board for the next game that's going to be played with that chess set by bringing his rook back to its home square And it's a ladder mate that cannot be prevented. It cannot be prevented. If you give a check, it's mate in 2. And that's it. Rook h8, setting up for the very next game. I don't know when the next game is going to be, probably in several weeks. And Levon has lost. Hikaru is the champion of the first leg of the Fide Grand Prix in Berlin. Exceptional. Didn't play a classical chess game in 800 days. And nobody knew what was going to happen. Absolutely nobody knew how he was going to perform. And he won it. And he mentioned in the interview afterward that now he's just a lot more happy. He's a lot less stressed about his games. And it allows him to handle bad positions easier. You know, it allows him to... His entire life and career isn't about all this competitive chess anymore. So when he has a slightly worse position, he just tries to play the board. Doesn't play anything big picture. To be honest, I mean, I even have something to learn from that, right? Because as you see in many of my own tournament games, sometimes I'm really struggling. I'm like in my own head a lot. And what this means for the standings of the Grand Prix is Hikaru gets 13 points. If you win a Grand Prix cycle like this, you get 13 points. If you get second place, you get 10 points. It's all on their website. If you're like knocked out in the semis, you get 7 points. There are now 2 more Grand Prix, Belgrade and Berlin again. I think Hikaru is playing in Berlin in the 3rd leg. So it doesn't mean he's guaranteed a candidate spot yet. But if he does well enough in the 2nd leg, doesn't have to win it, but maybe the semis, maybe 2nd place in his group, that score in total will qualify him to the candidates or not. So Levon and Hikaru are in the best position right now. I don't think he's playing in Belgrade, but that's massive. I mean, that's absolutely huge, and we're going to see as the Grand Prix unfolds. I'm obviously going to be making recaps of all of them. So big congratulations to Hikaru. Also congratulations, and I guess condolences to Aranyan for making, but also losing in the final. And that concludes the recaps, folks. I hope you enjoyed. I don't think I have anything left to say to you. I've very much enjoyed making the coverage of these games and your comments, and you were all super hyped to see this dude. So much love. I will see you back tomorrow with regularly scheduled Gotham programming. I've got a lot of cool ideas in the works, including a new series, which I won't leak just yet. Till next time, get out of here.